Welcome back to Sports, Exercise, and Health Science. My name is Mr. Kubusky. Today we're going to continue talking about Unit 1 for our class. If you're following the IB curriculum and using those numbers, this would actually be the very last subsection, so congratulations for getting all the way through this. Last time we talked about components of fitness. We talked about how there's two different types of fitness. Today we're going to talk about good training programs and what those include and what is involved in those. Okay, so again, we're still focused on 6.4. So there are 6 elements of a good training program that no matter what sport you play, what type of athlete you are, whatever it is that you do, okay, these 6 elements should be included in your training program. Even if you're not an athlete, even if you're just trying to get healthy, these 6 things should be included. Okay, we want to start with some type of warm-up. Some way to get our heart rate from a resting rate, like mine is right now, up to a rate that's going to be pretty close to where I want it to be during my workout. What we're going to learn throughout this class, and actually here pretty soon, is that heart rates are really important, okay, for being at my optimum level of performance, okay? Whether that be maybe I want to lose weight, I want to burn some fat, okay? There is a heart rate level that I want to be at in order to do that. Or let's say I'm getting ready for a competition. This is the most important event of my life. I want to be at my utmost and be at my maximum effort, be ready to go. Then there's a certain level I want my heart rate at for that. Okay, so heart rates are really important, and getting to that heart rate in a gradual fashion instead of just like jumping right to it is very important, not just for performance but also for overall health. Second, we want to have some type of flexibility training, some way of stretching our muscles past the limits that they are in order to get them to a better place. This is going to do a lot for us. Besides the fact it's going to help strengthen the muscles, it's also going to help us prevent injuries over a long period of time. So flexibility training important. Core training also important for preventing injuries. Okay, this is core. There's not a single sporting event that I can think of that does not necessarily involve your core. Okay, your core, those core muscles, front, abs, back, the glutes, the hams, all that, the quads, all that stuff. Okay, that's going to be something that we're going to want to focus on and spend some time doing some type of resistance training with them. Okay, then we want to do some type of strength training. This could involve weights. Obviously, you could get in the weight room and throw some weight around, bench press, squat, and so on and so forth. But if you don't have access to those, you could still do strength training just using the weight of your own body. Push-ups, sit-ups, infant squats, burpees, things like that. So there are ways to do strength training without that. Then we want to do some type of cardio, some type of way of making our heart stay at a certain level for a long period of time to improve our cardiovascular strength. And then finally, we want to have some type of cool down, some way of bringing ourselves back from that really high heart rate wherever we were, okay, 50%, 75%, 90%, okay, and we want to bring it back to that resting heart rate at a gradual pace. At the same time, what this is going to do for our muscles is, you got to remember, they're going to be stretched and they're going to be exhausted. We want to bring them back and allow them to gain oxygen back and replenish those oxygen reserves at a rate that is healthy for us. We don't just want to stop our workout and just stop doing anything. Okay, so those are the 6 parts of any good training program. Now, good training programs are going to follow 5 principles, and you'll see what I mean here in a second. The first one's called specificity, and what this means is that I want to do workouts specific to the sport that I'm involved in. Okay, if I want to be, a great javelin thrower, well, I want to better dang sure make sure that I am doing workouts that involve my core because of the twisting, my arm strength, my shoulder strength, my back, all that stuff. Okay, it's going to be very important. Squats are going to be important, but I'm going to do things that are specific to that sport, so that way I make sure that those muscles are where they need to be. Okay, another good example would be rowers. We've got the U.S. women's 8. Going to go for a consecutive gold medal here. At some point during their workouts, they should be doing some type of rowing motion. Okay, and doing some resistance with that to make them, all those muscles that are working in that direction, stronger. Okay, the second is periodization. Okay, the Olympics are coming up. Though some athletes are training, obviously there's world championships probably every year that they take part in, and maybe some tournaments. But their goal obviously is the Olympics. They want to be at their optimum when those Olympics come around. So they've got a 4-year span that they're going to work towards. Well, they're not going to start in September of 2016 after the Olympics are over at the same doing the same types of workouts that they're going to be doing in May of 2020 when they're getting ready for the next Olympics. They're going to go through periodizations of intensity, light training, heavy training, so on and so forth, and they're going to gradually, they're going to break themselves down and then build themselves back up over a period of time. So having a plan for that periodization, what is my goal? When do I want to be at my maximum, at my best performance? And when can I kind of give my body a chance to rest and bring it down to a level that I can maybe rebuild some muscle and things like that. Okay, so periodization, having a plan for breaking up the workouts over long periods of time, that's periodization. Progression, obviously that should make sense. That's the idea that you build towards something. You don't just start at your highest level and think that if my goal is to bench 300 pounds, I can't go walking into the weight room on my first day and put 300 pounds on the bench press and think I'm going to be able to do it. Okay, I've got to progress to that point. Okay, I got to start at whatever it is, 135, 155, 185. Work your way up to that level. Okay. Overload. This is the idea that if I want to get to that 300 pounds and I start at maybe 135, I can't just stay at 135. I've got to start adding weight, and that's the only way that my muscles are going to get stronger in order to get to my levels. It frustrates me as a football coach when we walk in the weight room and I see kids that are just putting on the same weight every single day. Like, how are you ever going to get any stronger? Yeah, I'm doing more reps. Well, that may be true, but you're not strengthening that. We're trying to build muscle, okay? You may be strengthening your muscular endurance, but we're talking about overall muscular strength. So that's what we need the overload principle for. So overload and progression obviously are really close together, and along with periodization as well. And then finally, reversibility. This comes down to one real simple thing. If you don't use it, you lose it. Okay? If I go in and I work out hard for a year and I get myself to the point where I'm benching those 300 pounds where I want to be, and then I just stop for 2 or 3 months, I should not expect to walk into that weight room after 3 months and be able to bench 300 pounds because I've lost those gains that I made to get to that point. So if you don't use those muscles that you've built up, you will begin to lose them. Okay, they will atrophy. Maybe not at a really dangerous level, but you're not going to be at that same level. So if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So how do we monitor our training programs? How do we monitor our athletes while they're working out, or ourselves while we're working out? The first one, easiest one, is heart rate. Okay, you've obviously learned what heart rate is, hopefully with your anatomy classes or in some earlier topics. But there is a target heart rate that we want to be at. Okay, now your maximum heart rate is real easy to calculate. It's an approximation, but it's going to be 220 minus your age. So if you're 20 years old, your maximum heart rate is 200. And now a good workout should be between maybe 60 and 85% of that target, of that maximum heart rate. Okay, and there again, for different types of activities and different things that you're working on, whether it's maybe resistance training, weight loss, whatever it is, okay, there's going to be certain levels of heart rate that I want to be at based on the type of workouts that I'm trying to do. So I want to be inside this range, and I'm not really doing a workout if I'm not inside the range of 60 to 85%. But that's how we calculate our maximum heart rate, okay, 220 minus your age, and then you take that percentage of that number, and then that's where we fall into these target heart rate zones. Okay. Now these are approximations. These are based on just like ages. Anybody that could walk in and use this scale. If we want to be more specific, and here's a way to do it in a 10-second count, because you're obviously not going to sit there and hold it for a minute and try to keep track. There's a lot easier way to do it. There's a more specific and individualized way called the Carvonen method. And what you do with the Carvonen method is you take your target heart rate that you want to be working at. Okay, that's what we're trying to determine. So we take our max heart rate, okay, 220 minus your age. We subtract our resting heart rate. Okay, you can figure that out. Just hold your pulse. Make sure you have a 10-second count and see how many beats that is over 10 seconds, and then multiply that by 6. Okay, that's your resting heart rate, beats per minute while you're resting. Okay, we multiply that number by whatever intensity we want to be working at. Okay, let's say 75%. That's a good number for athletes to be working at. And then finally, we add that resting heart rate back in, and that's going to be the number that beats per minute that we hit, that we want to be at while we're going through our workout. If we're not to that workout, not to that number, then we're not actually at that 75% that we want to be. So for myself, let's say I want to do a 75% workout. Okay, 186 is my max heart rate. My resting heart rate is 66 beats per minute. I multiply those and then I add the 66 back in. In order to be working out at 75%, then I need to be at 156 beats per minute. Okay, you can do this for yourself, real simple, and again, individualized. So that's a little bit more specific. Finally, we can have something called the Borg scale. The Borg scale is a little different. Okay, what it is, it's a rating of perceived exertion. Well, what does that word perceived mean? It means like how hard do you think you worked out? And we use a scale from 6 to 20. 6 being like me sitting here on my chair right now. Okay, I'm working out at about a 6. Okay, but if I go and do the most intense workout that I've ever done, I'm physically exhausted, cannot move, literally cannot move after the workout, that would be a 20. So, as a coach or as maybe a trainer or something like that, I might ask my athlete after a workout, "Hey, how'd you feel today? What were we at on the scale, 6 to 20? What do you think? Where were we at?" And they'd say, "Oh, I think I was at about a 12." Great. Okay, tomorrow let's go even harder. Okay, I want you to work out at a 14. Okay. Now I go to a different athlete, did the exact same workout. I ask them, "Hey, how was it today? What was your workout like?" It was like a 10. Okay. All right. Well, tomorrow we want to be at like a 12. We want to go a little bit higher. You'll notice, okay, it's the same workout, but each individual saw it differently. Okay, and now it's a chance to individualize things, but again, it's based on a perception, so it's not really scientific in nature. But again, it's good for that individual to say, okay, I was at a 12, I need to be at a 14, or I was at a 10, I need to be at a 12, or maybe I need to back down. I was at a 14, I need to back it down to an 8 the next day. Okay, but it's really good for individuals, not necessarily good for keeping data on, just because, again, it's perceived, it could change, and there's no scientific backing behind it. So, again, we talked about the principles of training. We talked about the parts of a good training regimen, and now we know how to monitor training for our athletes. Hope you learned something. Look forward to seeing you back when we do 6-1 and 6-2, and we start talking about good study design. And until then, have a good day.